If I could turn back time and give my drunken self a slap, I wouldn't hesitate for a second. But here I am, picking up the pieces. Hi, everyone, my name is Emily. I'm 30, and my husband, Luke, is 35. We've been together for 3 years, and honestly, I don't even know where to begin. Maybe the only way is to just let it all out. Let me warn you up front. This isn't one of those feel-good stories where everything magically works out in the end. It's messy, shameful, and entirely my fault. To start, I love my husband, or at least I thought I did. Luke is one of the kindest, most hardworking men I've ever met. He runs his own small business, and is the type of guy who remembers your coffee order without asking, stays up late to help you with things you didn't even realize you needed help with, and makes you feel secure just by being around. But I'm not here to brag about him. I'm here because I managed to destroy everything we had. It all started last Friday, a night that turned my world upside down. My friends and I had planned a girls' night out after work. The drinks were flowing. Wine, beer, cocktails, and by the time I stumbled through the front door, I was tipsy, riding a mix of alcohol, misplaced emotions, and insecurities I couldn't even name. Luke had stayed up to make sure I got home safely. That's the kind of person he is, steady, dependable, always looking out for me. And what did I do? I looked him straight in the eyes and said the most heartless thing imaginable. I'm not even attracted to you anymore. The worst part? I didn't even remember saying it. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a blurry memory of the previous night. Luke was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet with an expression that gutted me. His first words were, "Is this what you really think of me?" That's when it all began to unravel. "I need some time to think," he said, his voice steady but strained. Then, he turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the kitchen, a hollow ache forming in the pit of my stomach. That was Luke, calm and composed, even when hurt. Somehow, his restraint made everything feel worse. The days that followed were strange, to say the least. Luke didn't bring up the conversation again, but something between us had shifted. He wasn't outright cold, but there was an invisible wall he'd built between us, and I couldn't find a way through. Overnight, he started leaving for work earlier and coming home later, claiming he was buried in business. At home, his words to me became clipped, limited to only what was necessary. Gone were the small things I once cherished, him asking about my day, or sharing an amusing story from work. He was physically present, but emotionally absent. The silence was deafening, and every glance felt colder than the last. It was like living with the ghost of the man I married. Guilt began to gnaw at me, eating away at my resolve. This wasn't just about what I'd said that night. It was about everything that had led up to it. The resentment I let simmer, the thoughtless comments, the emotional chasm I'd allowed to grow. And now I was paying for it. I tried to mend things. I cooked his favorite meals, though I'd never been great in the kitchen. I left little notes in his lunch bag, just like I used to. One night, I even tried to bridge the growing gap with intimacy, hoping it could remind us of what we still had. But every attempt was met with the same tired, sad look. "Not tonight," he'd say softly, and it broke me a little more each time. Even my friends began to notice. At brunch, Jenna leaned over with a concerned look. "Is everything okay with you and Luke? You seem off." I dismissed it, calling it a phase, but the truth was glaringly obvious to anyone paying attention. Finally, one day, overwhelmed with frustration, I confided in Jenna. I told her everything. The night I drank too much, the careless words I'd let slip, and the fallout that followed. She didn't sugarcoat her response. "Emily, you've got to fix this before it's too late. Luke isn't the kind of man who will stick around if he feels like he's already lost you." Her words stung because they were true. But how do you fix something when the other person has already started pulling away? Luke didn't yell or accuse me. His silence was sharper than any words. It was as if he'd silently decided I wasn't worth fighting for anymore, and that realization crushed me. I walked on eggshells in my own home, overanalyzing everything. If I laughed at a joke on TV, I'd glance at him, afraid it might annoy him. If I asked about his day and got a one-word answer, I'd wonder if I'd overstepped. I was constantly trying to prove to both him and myself that I was still the woman he fell in love with. One night, I gathered my courage to bring it up again. Luke, I started hesitantly, about the other night. I'm really sorry. He cut me off, his voice quiet but firm. Emily, I've heard your apologies. I just need time. The finality in his tone silenced me, but inside, I was unraveling. I kept telling myself to be patient, but with each passing day, the distance between us grew wider. Eventually, I couldn't bear the weight of it all. One Friday night, desperate to escape the suffocating silence of our house, I decided to go out. I texted Jenna to join me at a bar, but she had plans with her husband, something I envied more than I cared to admit. So I went alone, telling myself it was just for a drink or two to clear my head. But as I sat there, surrounded by laughing couples and lively groups of friends, the loneliness hit me harder than ever. That's when he appeared, a man with an easy smile and a charm that made me feel noticed for the first time in weeks. Our conversation started innocently enough, small talk, shared laughs, but as the night wore on, the lines blurred. I knew it was wrong, yet I didn't stop. When he leaned closer and suggested we step outside, I followed, ignoring the voice in my head begging me to go home. The cool night air felt like a slap, but it wasn't enough to stop what happened next. We stood by his car, talking and laughing, and before I knew it, we were kissing. It wasn't passionate or romantic, just a desperate, messy attempt to fill the void inside me. The sound of a car pulling up snapped me back to reality. I turned and froze. Luke was there, sitting in his car, watching us. He didn't yell or confront me. He just looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and disgust before driving away. And in that moment, I knew I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that silence can cut deeper than words. Before I could say anything, he looked up at me, his eyes void of the warmth I once knew.
"We need to talk," he said.
His voice was steady, but the weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. I sat down across from him, my hands trembling as I struggled to find anything, meaningful to say.
But before I could, he began.
"You made it clear last night that you don't respect me or our marriage," he said, his tone cold yet controlled. "You've been pulling away for months, Emily." I tried to ignore it, hoping we could work through it, but what I saw last night, his jaw tightened. That was the final straw. My throat tightened, and tears began to well up. "Luke, it wasn't what it looked like. I swear I didn't mean for any of that to happen."
"Don't."
He cut me off, holding up a hand. "Don't make excuses. You kissed another man. You chose to do that, Emily. And even if you didn't mean for it to happen, it did. And I can't come back from that." The weight of his words shattered me. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry," I cried. "I messed up. I know I did, but I love you, Luke. Please just let me make it right." He shook his head, and for the first time, I saw his eyes glisten. Yet no tears fell. "I gave you everything I had, and it still wasn't enough. I don't even know who you are anymore." His voice was steady but hollow. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but it won't be with me." Those words crushed me more than if he had screamed in anger. I wanted to plead, to argue, but I saw it in his face. This wasn't just hurt or anger. This was final. He stood up and walked toward the door. "I'll pack my things and move out by the end of the week," he said, his tone distant. "My lawyer will contact you about the separation." "Luke, please," I begged, following him to the door. "Don't do this. I'll do anything to fix it. Just tell me what to do." He paused and turned, his expression blank. "You can't fix this, Emily. You broke it. And I'm not staying to pick up the pieces." And then he was gone. The days that followed were the darkest of my life. True to his word, Luke packed his things and moved out without argument. He didn't ask for anything but his clothes and a few personal items. The house felt hollow, and I spent most of my time crying, replaying every mistake I'd made. When his lawyer reached out about the separation, it felt like the final nail in the coffin. Luke wasn't leaving space for reconciliation. He was cutting all ties. I signed the papers in a daze, barely able to comprehend the reality of it all. I tried reaching out to him, but every call went to voicemail, every text unanswered. It was as though I'd become a stranger, someone he wanted no connection to. And honestly, I couldn't blame him. I'd disrespected him, our marriage, and everything we'd built together. It's been 6 months since Luke walked out of my life, and not a day goes by where I don't think about how badly I screwed things up. He's moved on now. From what I've heard, he's thriving, opening a new business, dating someone new. I ran into them once by accident. She was stunning, effortlessly beautiful, and she looked at him like he was her whole world. He looked free, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Meanwhile, I'm here in a tiny studio apartment, piecing together the remnants of my life. My parents helped me move in, though their disappointment was palpable. My mom didn't hold back. "Emily, you had everything most women dream of, and you threw it away." She wasn't wrong. I've had months to reflect on everything. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the way I let my insecurities poison something real. I was so focused on appearances, on creating a perfect life that looked good to others, that I overlooked what I already had, a man who loved me unconditionally. Now, I'm the cautionary tale. Friends have distanced themselves, and whispers follow me wherever I go. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself, but I'm trying to move forward. If nothing else, I hope my story serves as a warning. If you have someone who loves you, don't take them for granted. Luke, if you ever hear this, I'm sorry. You deserved better, and I hope you've found that now. To everyone else, take care of the people you love. Don't let insecurities or vanity rob you of something real. Trust me, the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's just an illusion that leaves you standing in the wreckage of what you once had. That's my reality. It's messy, painful, and mine to live with. Take care and love fiercely while you can.